Superhero fatigue? I think Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse has something to say about that.
You can't run forever, kid!
I can't lose one more friend.
Miguel, this isn't what we talked about!
You knew?
I have no idea what you're doing!
Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. So today we are talking about Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. This is the sequel to the beloved Into the Spiderverse, which came out several years ago. At this point, Miles Morales, he's been Spider-Man for a little while now. A new villain comes into play in this film. There's issues with the multiverse, and that's all I'm really going to say, especially if you haven't seen the film, because there's definitely a lot of surprises in here that I want you guys to avoid spoilers if you can, so that way you can go into this movie and experience them for yourself. So that's all I'll kind of say about as far as like the plot goes, really. So for myself personally, I actually didn't see Into the Spiderverse when it hit theaters several years ago for whatever reason. I don't know why I didn't end up seeing it, but I just didn't get a chance to check it out until it was released on Blu-ray, 4K, a little bit after its theatrical run. Finally got a chance to check it out, loved it, so once they announced that they were doing the sequel, this was instantly one of my most anticipated movies. You guys, if you saw my list, one of my most anticipated for the year. And plus, you had all of the hype just from all the early screenings that we got of this film that a lot of people were saying that, oh, this is one of the greatest movies of all time. This is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. And sometimes that can be a little dangerous because then people kind of had that expectation. You try to go into films not having those expectations, but when you're hearing all this kind of talk going into a film, it's like, okay, like what's all the hype about? So it can be a little dangerous, but it is safe to say, at least for me personally, I think that Across the Spiderverse is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. The animation in this movie is just next level. It's absolutely fucking incredible what they were able to achieve with this film. When I saw an interview or heard about that there was over 1,000 artists that has worked on this film, in a way I really wasn't surprised because there was moments in this movie where I was watching some of these visuals play out on the big screen and I was just sitting there with my mouth open like, how were they able to achieve this? And some of the highlights as far as like the animation goes, so when we get to see some of the different Spider-Men throughout the film, I loved how there were several different animation styles for each one of them. So it kind of, you saw that they were different just by looking at them, but adding that different animation style just kind of took that to the next level. So I really dug that. There is a particular scene where Gwen and Miles, they're swinging throughout New York, and just that whole sequence just looked absolutely amazing. I loved how New York is basically like kind of its own character in the film too. The way that they were able to make New York look was just like mind-blowing, so gorgeous. And then there was also a chase/fight scene that involves a train that was probably another one of my highlights of the film, but I won't go into too much detail as far as that goes. Honestly, this is one of those kind of movies because of there's so much going on visually that you could watch this movie multiple times, and I got to see it twice this weekend, and I think that you'll be able to pick up on different things because you're just trying to keep up with what's going on the screen, that you're probably going to miss little details here and there. So I always appreciate it when you can watch a movie and come back multiple times and pick up on little details like that. So this is definitely going to be one of those movies for sure. And so as far as the characters go, Miles Morales, he is obviously the main character of these films that we've gotten, but I was really happy to see that there was actually a lot more of a focus on Gwen in this film in particular. We get to see a little bit of her backstory in this movie, and she plays a pretty significant role in the rest of the film with some of the events that play out. I would be pretty excited, and I hope that we get a Gwen, like her own kind of movie or a spinoff or something. I would totally be down to check that out. But yeah, overall, Hailee Steinfeld, she just absolutely knocks it out of the park as this character. Definitely one of my favorite characters in the film for sure. You guys can see right here, I was able to get one of the Gwen Spider-Man popcorn helmets from AMC, so I was pretty happy to snag this. And then of course you have Miles Morales. So, as I mentioned earlier, he's been Spider-Man for a couple years now. He's kind of starting to come into his own a little bit, but he is still having that classic Spider-Man struggle of where yes, he's been Spider-Man, getting a little bit more hang of that, but trying to find that balance of his superhero life, but then also trying to have a balance with his everyday regular life as well. And we get some really great scenes between him and his parents in this movie, some really good dialogue scenes that I appreciated. And of course, with it being a Spider-Verse movie, there's a number of different Spider-Man throughout this film. There's a bunch of different cameos, but one of the things that this movie does really well is that none of these other characters, they don't feel forced, or they don't just feel like they're for nostalgia's sakes or anything like that, because there's shout outs to the comics, there's shout outs to video games, and just different things like that. If you haven't seen the movie, definitely avoid spoilers, because I'm sure they're all over the place now that the movie is officially out. But there's several different cameos in there when I was watching it with my audience that got people to gasp and say, oh my god. So just a heads up, if you haven't seen it, avoid the spoilers, because there's some nice surprises in there. But the way that they were able to utilize these characters, I think they did a really good job, because when you have such a massive cast of extra characters, sometimes that can be very challenging, I feel like, to try and balance all of that, but they do a really good job with this film. And even though this is a part one of a two-part film, and it does end on a cliffhanger, just a heads up, and I know some people are a little mad about how it ended and, a little frustrated. I fully expected that going into this movie, just because I knew this was a two-part film. And I know originally they were going to keep the part one and the part two in the title, but they decided to take that off. And so maybe people weren't thinking they were going to get a cliffhanger for whatever reason. But it's kind of like Infinity War and Endgame in a way. So I fully expected that. I think for me personally that Across the Spiderverse, it works on all levels, and it still feels like its own film, even though it is the middle entry in a trilogy. And that can be hard to do when you have a set of 3 films. A lot of times, like, some of them can just feel like a bridger or a gap filler between the other 2 movies. And for me, at least, this doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's its own thing. But I know there is some people that are a little mad about how it ends on the cliffhanger. So, but I do understand that. But overall, Across the Spiderverse, it's one of those movies, it's one of those event type of films that when you see it, you feel like you're seeing something special. I got to see it twice this weekend. Both nights were packed. People dressed up. You could just feel the energy in the crowd. The line for the concession was huge. It was great, other than the second night when I had 2 people that were sitting next to me, and they literally just were talking throughout a good chunk of the film, and it took everything in my being not to turn next to him and just, can you shut the fuck up and watch the movie? I don't know what is so hard about that, but it drives me nuts. But overall, I still had a great experience at watching it the second time. The only thing that I will notice, and I've actually seen this online for other people that experienced it well, because the first night that I saw it, I was like, am I just like losing my hearing or something? So I saw it actually both times in Cinemark XD. So maybe, I don't know if it's just like that, or IMAX. I haven't had a chance to see it in IMAX or anything. But the opening of the film, the good 15, 20 minutes or whatever, or at least like the first 5 to 10 minutes, I should say, it seemed like there was like some issues with the audio. There's a character talking, and there's kind of music playing in the background, and I felt like the music drowned out a little bit of what that character was saying. Like, I could still hear them talking, but it was a little bit of a challenge, and I saw that I wasn't the only one. So interesting to see like what happened there. The sound mix, I don't know what happened, but I'm glad that I wasn't the only one, because I thought for a second, I was like, am I just like losing my hearing, or what's going on? But overall, I had a great experience. It's one of those movies, honestly, a comic book movie that it feels like a comic that's been ripped right off the pages and it's come to life. So one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I can't wait to check it out again. Definitely going to be picking it up when it comes out. And if you guys haven't seen it already, because I know a ton of people have, make sure, I highly recommend you guys go ahead and check it out. If you have seen it, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And if you haven't, is it something that you are planning to check out? And where do you rank this as far as your Spider-Man films go? So let me know down below in the comments. As always, guys, if you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.